Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine.
Welcome back to Love the Way You Live with Charlie Lewis, where we bring you everything from real estate, fashion, style, food, travel, the likes, anything that's trending and anything that's hot, so you can continue to love the way you live.
Yes.
But today, one of the hottest real estate topics I think that's happening all over the country, and I have Andrea and Archie Allen back in the house.
We're here.
Thank you, thank you.
And today, I think we want to jump on the subject of gentrification and how does that impact a community. Who is it affecting in a particular community? How is it looked upon? Because there's so many different emotions with gentrification.
Yeah.
And my biggest thing is for you guys out there, since I am a real estate agent, broker, is gentrification and what that truly means. Gentrifying, is basically always looked upon as when a neighborhood that was not up and coming or that was not happening at one point in time, or it could have been happening at one point in time, and then it just down out either by drugs or people moved out of the neighborhood, crime, whatever the case may be. That's now all of a sudden you have rebirth. Revitalization of coming in. So, and then you always start to say, this neighborhood is gentrifying. That neighborhood is gentrifying. Or people will say, even Harlem is gentrifying. And I say you got to be careful about gentrification. And
why
what
is that?
Gentrification really means. Because I think it gets cultural. And so it can go down race lines, division of race, economic lines. People feel forced out, whether you white or black. White people can be gentrified in their particular neighborhood. And of course, black people can be gentrified in their particular neighborhoods or neighborhoods that were formerly known to be black. Maybe even though black people are not living there anymore.
Right.
That'll be the biggest, that's always the biggest fight I always hear is there's a neighborhood that used to be black. There's probably 10 black people living in the neighborhood, but all of a sudden now the neighborhood is coming back and everybody's up in arms about that neighborhood. Well, nobody's there.
Yeah.
So we needed some, that neighborhood to be revived. The thing about gentrification, it happens in spurts and it happens over time. Everywhere in the country today, and I think in the world, people are moving to the urban centers. So, with that, everything happened in seasons. Everybody, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, everybody was going to the suburbs because it was all about school. It was all about convenience. It was all about getting a nice home.
They thought there was less crime
out there. And then all of a sudden, everybody gets out there. Crime create students, kids get into trouble because they have nothing to do. They're bored out of their mind.
Involved in drugs.
They get involved in drugs and everything. Or the kids leave home. And then you have the empty nesters out with 5,000, 3,000, 3 to 5 to 10,000 square feet of house. And you're like, what am I doing here? So I want to move back to the city where arts, crafts, and services are. And I think we're just moving back in that environment because people really want to live and be in a sense of community. We ran away from community because you ran away from your traditional home of growing up on down the street from your neighbor. You knew who your neighbor was, to running out to the suburbs where you didn't even really speak to your neighbor, and you moved away from your family, so you don't have that connection, so you're trying to build community. Whereas when you come into the city, there's a sense of community already there. So I think there are cities that get it right, and there are cities that get it wrong.
Now, there are some cities that they're making this. It's a very intentional move on their part. Developers are coming in. They're making sure the services are downtown. The Whole Foods are going in.
Right.
All of the retail shops.
Right.
And so everything that someone needs is right there in the urban center.
Right. And I think why gentrification is such a sore
Kind of
topic,
a
sore point for a lot of people, and I really think it's misguided and misdirected. And why I say that is because this goes back to the thing of elections matter. Your local commissioner, councilman, your mayor, your governor, They are the ones making the decisions as far as who gets tax breaks and tax incentives for different neighborhoods and different municipalities, across the country, hands down. If your councilman is giving the shop away, you should not be mad at gentrification. You should be mad and out at getting rid of that councilman or commissioner that's selling your neighborhood out. New York has the best affordable housing, and even for New Yorkers, it don't feel like we have the best affordable strategy, but we have the best laws on the books.
Okay.
When your developer moves into a particular neighborhood, they have to give tax incentives. They get, the city gives the developer a tax incentive, but in return for that, you have to have usually 20. It could be 30. Most buildings are 80-20. 80% free market, 20% affordable housing. Some buildings I've sold in buildings where I've sold the 20% free market, 80% affordable. So it depends on how the program came together and what the city is offering. So you need to always, number one, check and see. D.C. has some of the worst gentrification. Some of the gentrification, but landlord, tenant, developer incentives. They have them on the books, but they don't enforce them and they don't enact them. And so the developers, why D.C. it used to be Chocolate City, and now people call it white chocolate.
Yeah, white chocolate.
Or milk chocolate.
I hadn't heard white chocolate.
Or milk chocolate.
I remember Chocolate City.
Yeah, but why they call it white chocolate or milk chocolate is because bottom line is they got rid of block by block by block. And so when they built these buildings, they didn't have any affordable piece to it.
Right.
Whereas in New York, you go in Harlem, all the buildings that are built, 9 times out of 10, they got 20% affordable housing in them. And so why I say it's misguided is because you got to be mad at, you got to look at what was the structure and what was on the books for how people were brought into and how people sold the neighborhood from up under you.
And I think the very creation of the suburb caused people to move out of metropolitan areas.
They did.
Thus, more than likely, they took the tax base out of the city.
Correct.
And when the tax base leaves the city has to cut services.
Right.
So when the city cuts services, crime goes up, things get haywire. Then the people who are left in the city need to go to where the services are, which is in the suburbs.
So then you have a reverse migration,
and then they come.
They come back
to the city.
It literally is a cycle.
It's a cycle. It's a cycle. So you have to get ahead of the cycle and be a part of the cycle.
Well, that's the problem. A lot of people don't want to be part of the cycle.
What happens is people confuse that activity with gentrification.
And it's not always gentrification. It's bottom line, if you got a blight area and nobody's there, you want somebody. Look at Baltimore. Let's take Baltimore. We take Baltimore, we can take Detroit. 2 cities. And I'm going to throw New York in them. Baltimore, number 1. East side of Baltimore. Row after row after row after row after row. You go in, you ride in Metro North. You ride in Amtrak and you go through Baltimore. You go through Baltimore right now, and there is no body living on the east side of Baltimore.
Wow.
It's just blight. It's just desolate. So
that's
you
where
would want people.
Is that where the docks are? Are the docks on the east side, or is that?
I'm not familiar enough with docks to be giving you pinpoint in Baltimore. I don't know nothing about that Baltimore.
Down by the harbor.
Down by the harbor. I don't know nothing about no Baltimore. All I do know the east side. That ain't nobody on the east side. It ain't been nobody on the east side for the last 20 years.
So maybe that's where you need to go buy a little property right now.
You need to go on the east side and buy some property. Bottom line is the Orioles are there, the Harbor is there. Anything close to that, you need to buy close to that vicinity of where John Hopkins, anything. John Hopkins owned Baltimore. They done built up and bought up everything in Baltimore, and people will tell you that in a minute. Detroit. Detroit had the largest number of African-American homeowners in the countries back in the 70s, 80s. Factory jobs were there.
GM, Chrysler.
The industrialization of Detroit and a lot of plants leaving cities and urban areas where people had pensions and jobs and maintain. Where these kids, there are so many people that are educated from Detroit African Americans that are all over the world doing great things, and they'll find out where they're from. Detroit. Because they had a middle class that just grew because of those factory jobs, and then they educate their kids away from the factory.
Yeah.
To become doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, money managers all over the world. And they're doing a great job of that, but nobody was coming back into Detroit. And then Detroit also, too, didn't really have a educational base in Detroit, except Wayne State.
Right.
It's not like other cities where you got 3 and 4 and 5 different colleges to bring different industries. So Detroit killed itself when they only made the money off the auto industry, and they didn't diversify too early on. Now you see tech coming to Detroit and all these other companies coming to Detroit, and so people they're looking at Detroit totally different.
Well, that's because too the city has made a intentional effort to give tax incentives to different companies and to developers to come on in and rebuild our city.
But there's no way in the world, probably besides Baltimore, in a metropolitan area where you can go buy a house for $50,000.
Yeah.
You can still buy houses in Detroit for $50,000, apartments for $35,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. So people in Detroit, if you're out there and you keep on listening and you keep on saying, I don't believe this gentrification is happening, stop sitting on the sideline. It's 10% down. $5,000, you can go and buy a house and hold it. There are people right now, there's a Vice special out where there's a guy and his son, and he has like 3 people working, and they are buying house hand over fist. Hand over feet, boom, 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 just buying. And they even are to the point where they are buying people who they know that they are downtown at the tax department looking at how many people, what taxes they owe. If they're behind on their taxes, if they are buying up the taxes, they're buying a house from them, and then the people are now renting their house back to people.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's a system. And people are getting ahead because people are in places, and they are putting people in places in order to do it.
But do you see that as, and this is the kind of controversial conversation about this whole gentrification, that is, it's the haves and the have-nots. It's the haves who are taking away from the have-nots or taking advantage of the people who don't have.
It is a person who has a capitalistic mentality that understands that I can win here.
And that's okay.
I can win by going down and buying houses for $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 hand over foot. Why not?
Why not?
Set up your structure. You want to go work for the man and get your job and be secure. And if you want your coins coming from the man, as opposed to setting up your own destiny and doing your own thing, you could be in Detroit setting up your business, having a side partner, going down to the tax department and looking and find out what houses are on the market, coming up on the market. Why not?
So in other words, stop hating and be part of
be part
program.
of the solution.
Yeah, it's easy to
it's easy to sit back and complain. It's easy for us to sit back and complain. People complained about Whole Foods coming to Harlem. But all the people are in Harlem. In Harlem.
The people's up
at
in
the
Harlem,
line getting the buffet.
The people who complain about Harlem and Whole Foods
they're
coming to
shopping
Harlem,
in Harlem.
they shopping at Whole Foods in Harlem. And more of them than the people who they were complaining about and thinking that it was for them. So the bottom line is, and why not have services in your neighborhood?
Everybody wants services where they live. Yeah.
You want a good dry cleaner.
Right.
You want restaurants. You want good places to eat. You want. I don't have to go downtown. I'm in Harlem. I don't want to have to go downtown to have a good meal. I don't have to go downtown to have to shop and do everything. I want to be able to walk and enjoy the luxuries of walking and get my groceries. And if I want to go every day to the market, I can go every day to the market because I got a Whole Foods now that's on the corner that I can go and get what I need.
So if you see Charlie in Whole Foods,
I'm buying it.
I'm buying in my neighborhood. Yeah.
That's what it is.
So but you have to do it as a collective, and you can pull your resources together to do it and do it that way. You can't buy in New York now. New York is just. I mean, you can buy in New York. Don't get me wrong. You can buy in New York, but not like where you can buy in these other cities. And really, if you want to get into the investment of buying a house and coming up and doing all of that, so you can go in these neighborhoods and see right now what's going on. But like I say, it goes back to, as in my buying segment that I was saying, look at the school districts of where things are and in buying up. And then you ain't even got to look at that. You can go down to the city council meetings, find out what the big, what the urban plan is for the city,
yes.
and what they're shopping and who they're going after and what neighborhoods they're going after.
Because that's
where you buy.
Yeah,
and that's how you do it.
It's definitely intentional, and it's a long range plan. It's not just for a year or 2 years. They are looking for how they can continue to increase the tax base for the city. And it's intentional,
right.
and you got to be part of the process,
right? So
and you got to know what's going on.
Yeah. So people always come to me and say, "Well, how do you feel you selling real estate in Harlem, and who's your audience?" Well, my audience is mixed. I get black, I get white, I get Asian, I get Latino.
It's like whoever's got the money.
Whoever got the money come to me, and and I do a large percentage of African American, professional African American women, men. Coming to me to buy homes, rent homes in Harlem, and whatever the case may be. And so they always say, well, how do you feel, with other people coming into the neighborhood? Well, everybody, you can go anywhere. That's called steering. Yeah. You trying to steer, white people out of the neighborhood, you can't do that. That's what happened to us. Just as much as
you don't want them to do that to you.
Yeah. So you can't even have that.
That's not an argument.
It's not even an argument for me. And then when you have organizations in Harlem who bring in outside brokers that, because of popularity, into Harlem to talk about Harlem, and they don't even do business in Harlem, and I'm there in Harlem, and then they don't have me on a panel, so the neighborhood is not even helping themselves. So let's start there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So you and me and this whole gentrification thing, it doesn't wash. For me, it's about the opportunity. You see the opportunity, you go for it, you make it better. You want all neighborhoods to be good. D.C., they have their own stuff to worry about. The problem why D.C. happened, what happened in the 80s, I was there. When Rayful Edmonds was shooting up D.C., people could no longer stay in those houses. They were like, I gotta go. It's too much crime, it's too much. I'm going to Mitchellville.
Right.
And everybody went to Mitchellville. I'm going to PG County.
PG
County got the most affluent African Americans, but they have no services. Ain't that something?
So they're coming back into the city for the services.
They have to come back into the city. Yeah. Oh, they have to bring their kid now in the city to go to school, because the best schools now are in the city instead of PG County.
Isn't that something?
So you got to now know, and then what happens to African Americans that we take care of the whole family. And so you got mama to take care of, you got kids to take care of, whatever the case may be. Or you may have been left a house where you're not financially able to take care of the house. So then therefore you had to sell the house because you couldn't pay the taxes on it, or you would have lost it. Right. So that starts to happen in our community, where we start losing our position in a particular neighborhood because of our circumstances. So that's why you have to write your wills and your trusts and your estates to be able to hand this stuff down and do it orderly. So then therefore you can keep your neighborhood intact. And if you keep your neighborhood intact, then therefore you don't have to worry about gentrification, because you have done what you needed to do on the front side. Instead of on the backhand side, when you had to leave Leroy the house, and Leroy knows nothing about finances. Yeah. Leroy doesn't know about paying taxes, and then he loses the house, and then somebody comes in and snap it up like that. Because there are people waiting to buy these homes for nothing, because that's how you make money in America, through real estate.
Would love to, maybe some future episodes talk about how we can use real estate to build wealth and legacy and trust. Definitely trust, and setting up trust, and how you can. I know we may have had one show.
We did Will and Trust. Yeah, I'm setting
attorney
up
from Chicago.
Of why Gina Smith, fabulous attorney.
Go back to that episode.
Go back to that episode. Definitely need to get your trust in your state. The first thing you do after you buy a house is you should be going through your will and trust attorney and putting it in a will and a trust. So you should be leaving that attorney and then going over here to this attorney and signing up. You should never have a house. Your house should never be outside of a will or a trust, because you never wanted to go into probate.
Right.
You always wanted to go into the hands. But then you don't always need to leave all your kids everything. You need to leave the responsible kid the one in charge and let them make the decisions, because also too, every kid is not making the money, and everybody want to be equal. And I want to leave. I got 3 kids, so I want a third, and a third. No, well, one of those thirds might not be a good
not
student.
responsible.
That's true.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure the responsible one knows how to take care of the other ones, and you need to spell it out.
Yeah.
And it's something that a lot of people in the African American community don't do, which is talk about. They don't want to talk about death. They don't want to talk about their legacy. But as Jay-Z said, legacy, legacy, legacy on his album 440, 444. You better listen to it, and you better understand that it is all about the legacy, and that is why gentrification takes place and happens, because we don't do our part on the front end
to maintain. That's it.
And so you can't be mad at anybody when you're not doing the work and putting in the work.
Yes.
That's anything in life. Loving the way you live is putting in the work. Gentrification is because the work was not
put in. Yeah.
And if your families get over this whole thing of being able to not to talk about death and I can't talk about that, it's just too mundane and everything. You got to get over that conversation. You got to look at it as an investment.
Yeah.
Life is an investment. If you start having kids, and that's the purpose of everybody saying, "Oh, I want to get married." And well, how many kids you want to have? Well, before you start doing all of that, start thinking about what legacy you want to leave and what legacy you want to do. So you got to think about your health and you got to think about your wealth. And the bottom line is, in order to get all of that intact, you got to put that in a probate, in a will, get that together. So then, therefore, when you do leave this earth, go on to greater glory.
Go on to be
and
with
if
Jesus.
you got kids,
Yeah.
they are protected,
They'll have
and
that.
you have that life insurance,
Yeah.
real estate.
Yep.
That's how
Great
people move
conversation.
there.
Definitely.
So that's my gentrification story.
I think you're going to get a lot of people talking about this, and maybe calling and or writing or
I think we'll do an
having their
episode where
opinions about
they
it.
can write in and they
Yeah.
can give us the opinions on gentrification.
you have a question?
And have questions, and we'll do a follow-up show to that.
Absolutely.
So we can talk to people about that in their particular city, and they might have different things. But I definitely want you to leave here today understanding that it's all about elections. It's all about who you have as representing you in your particular area and how they look at land development and what they're bringing in businesses and how they are doing that and how that would affect them. I had a friend of mine said, "Oh my God, it's enough traffic right now in DC for Amazon to come in here." I said, "Call me back in 10 years when your house appreciated 200%. For real.
Oh, boom. There you go. Boom.
And you'll be able to deal with a little traffic, and then you'll have a retirement program, and you'll be sitting on coin because of Amazon coming into your neighborhood.
Right, because
You talking about an inconvenience when you about to get
making
ready,
money, right.
about to be making money.
It's true.
And it's the thinking. You
Yeah.
got to
You
shift
gotta
your
change your
mind, and you
mind.
got to change your mindset.
Well, that's what we're here to do.
That's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Charlie Lewis.
All right. So, everybody, you can find me on social media at charlielewisnyc.com, my website, or on Twitter at charlielewis, lovethewayyoulive.com. Love the Way You Live, Instagram, Love the Way You Live, and Facebook at Love the Way You Live. And until next time, continue to celebrate life and
Love the way you live.
Let the sun shine. 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 Let the sun shine.